All right, recording started. Welcome, everybody, some new faces, some old faces, to the May 30th community meeting for Cloud Custodian. Got a link with the agenda and some notes in HackMD, and trying to catch up on some of the pre-game discussion. Thanks, Prasanna joined us and had some questions about GCP audit mode. I'm going to try to get some notes in there, and anyone else who was listening can try to keep me honest, make any additions or corrections. Since we do have some new faces, does anyone want to formally introduce themselves on camera? No pressure. All right, well, whether you do or you don't, welcome to all. Okay, so again, pre-game stuff was around GCP audit. I'm going to share these notes on screen too, so we have the recording. And hopefully folks will be able to see this. I'll zoom in a bit. And just later. This was the discussion. It was about a GCP audit mode policy that was matching instances and then not stopping them. We just talked about checking the logs to make sure where that issue is coming from, and look into some ways around that going forward. Other opening items here. We're still moving on from Python 3.7 this year. We've got a tips and tricks section in discussions, GitHub Discussions. I actually saw a little bit of activity there recently. I need to go check in on that. And then for the report, since last time we did have a new release. So thanks for that. Thanks to everybody who contributed to that. Kapil, since I missed some of that one, are there any noteworthy items from that? I saw some of the Docker builds that we could, but is there anything else?
No, nothing user facing. I mean, the release is out. I was hoping to try to work on some of the release automation, maybe for the next release. Realistically, it's not gonna be. We're not gonna have automated releases till July, but hopeful to make some progress on that front. I think we went a little bit late this month, just because we were trying to also work together on some fixes for the freeze export, which AJ worked on, just because I think the mailer on the last release basically ended up pulling in all the providers, even though it was intended to be optional by which provider you're using. But on the release itself, nothing particularly of note, sort of standard release per se, otherwise.
Oh, I think you're right about the release number 2, Sunny. I think that was 27, not 28.
Yep.
Might get ahead of the game here. Okay. Yeah, live in the future. Let's go fix that before anyone expects too much. Okay, so thanks for that one. Nothing crazy.
On the next release, there was one thing there was one issue about memory usage that I've been trying to figure out. Because I did mark it down as sort of like a release blocker, but I was hoping to meet with the reporter sometime this week. They handed me their policies, but there was nothing. I think there's a general question here of like, do we need some sort of memory smoke test of something just to validate as far as regressions? But there wasn't anything obvious. And going through their policies and looking at the particular filters and actions that were being used, we could incorporate memory, which is a memory tester. I was also wondering about like if we did a functional test where we create like 1,000 log groups or 1,000 resources of some kind and like ran a few policies on it just to see if we're getting full effect. That might be interesting. So I'm sort of like stuck on like, how do we, A, can we reproduce this? B, what are we doing to make sure that it doesn't happen? Because like these questions come up and it's like, how do we tell and it gets tricky. So I'd like to have some sort of in-tree functional test capability that allows us to simulate and measure and track.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering, so with that one, it seemed like it was specifically a combination of C7 and org across multiple accounts, multiple regions, multiple policies, and it was somewhere in that combination with a combined with a version change. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was able to track it back to, I mean, he's identifying 0925 as the place where it started, but I went through like every line delta from 924 to 925, and I didn't see, nothing really came out at me that was like, you know, this might do something.
Yeah.
So I'm a little unclear. It is the place where we moved client construction and batch augment from worker threads back to main thread, but that's actually reduced memory consumption and reduced API calls. So like that part, there wasn't a whole lot of anything that would cause systemic across a larger set of policies. So that said, I think the right answer is probably come up with some smoke test, and maybe we can run it through some of the older Docker images just to see if we identify it ourselves, and if we can, then maybe do some bisecting within the commit history. But I think even just having that as having a smoke test will let us just do memory, like a check going forward, let's say.
That's true. I guess it's even conceivable it could be something on the dependency side too. I mean, it seems, you never know. Yeah.
I did drop a comment in, but it was I think my first comment is like that it could be a dependency change. But you know, obviously we that's you know, it's a little bit early to say. It was early at that time, but I think that could be true in this context. They definitely had all the resources, all providers installed in this context. So in terms of looking at their full package list, so don't have a great answer. I think there's a reasonable game plan on sort of going forward. Like let's write a memory smoke test that deals with some real world resource cardinalities, and just measure and have that as a regression test.
That sounds good. All right. So that was the memory issue. Are there other, anyone else on the call, any other pressing issues, issues related to release, or any open issues here that could use some extra discussion?
Or any PRs people are interested in highlighting that they need more attention on?
Certainly.
Or like attention on? Derek, if you're on, that was a hint for you. I think
yeah, I figured. I have been distracted with something else, so I was not at all prepared. I just thought I would join and see what this was like.
Oh, cool. Well, we were going through an issue about GCP audit mode, and then we were talking about the release and tracking down potential memory usage thing. But we're I saw you join and thought I'd comment on the PRs. It looks like Patrice, you dropped one in. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was an issue that I had opened up a few weeks back. Do you mind elaborating a bit more on
Sure.
manually assembling them in the
Yeah,
JSON?
so context for people, like when we go to drop a notification, the transports for notifications all have different size limits. Like AWS is 256, Azure is like, it depends on your service level, like 40 to like 80, and for 40 or 64, and then I think GCP actually supports a few megabytes. And currently we statically size based on some arbitrary number, and obviously some resources are bigger than others. And so the notion here was, instead of statically sizing, let's serialize each resource one at a time, instead of serializing the batch, and keep track of the size. So if we serialize one resource, we know how big that is. So it's the next resource, and then we do that so forth till we get to we know we're approaching our transport limit, and then we stop. So now we're instead of statically sizing the batch, we're dynamically sizing the batch. Now this gets a little more complicated because we're also compressing it, and we're also basically C4ing it. But those are typically constants, and so you get typically a constant compression ratio. So we just use that as like a multiply by 0.7 or et cetera.
Yeah.
And that will effectively, that would be some notion of dynamic. Let's dynamically do dynamic batch sizing based on individually serializing, getting the size calculation, and then manually assembling the serialized resources together in an array.
Got it. Okay.
There might be a little bit more there, but I'm happy to, if you want to ping me offline, I'm happy to work through it.
I'll try to take a stab at it and see if I run into issues.
Awesome. Thank you. That's been a long-standing desire. So cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so that would be more dynamic than the option where with something like the webhook action where we have a default that's overridable. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions, comments about that one? Okay. Or other, I know there were from the last meeting, I know there was this issue was reopened. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I don't know if other folks have the copy related tag. I know this was where there was the error, the scalar error showing up with copy related tag on Redshift and RDS.
I tried to replicate it, but I couldn't reproduce this error.
Okay.
It's on my radar, but potentially this week I'll try to work on it.
Okay.
Does this sound okay, AJ?
Just to work on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not. I haven't been able to do anything. But if I come up with something, I'll let you know, or we can catch up after. It's fine. Okay. Cool. So nothing else for that one now. Any other issues or PRs? Oh, well, Kapil, is that stuff that you're talking about with GCP? Is that worth pointing out here?
Yeah, I mean, so somebody I have never done it before, but apparently it's a thing to do in GCP. They call it impersonation, and AWS would call it role assume. And so somebody contributed support for it. I did a minor change just so that you can actually pass the impersonation role on the command line as -- role. -- assume to pass the identity you want to role assume. Impersonate to, and then I was also just testing workload identity federation in this context of going from AWS into GCP without static credentials. And if you get the client credential config file and you just set that up as your application credentials environment variable, it just works. So I just wanted to point that out. And I got a PR up, I think, to sort of add that to the docs. So, no static credentials anyway. Yay.
Sweet. Something I meant to put on the earlier part of the agenda was I saw along with the last release that we also have a new maintainer who's not on the call, but Kent NSW.
Kent out of New South Australia. So this is not time zone efficient to him or time zone viable to him. He's done a bunch of PRs over the years. He was I think he was working at a bank before, and he's working at a different place now. And he's looking forward to potentially using Custodian as his new job. But it's been something I wanted to do for a little while, just because he's had some really good enduring contributions. Actually, maybe it's for a while. Maybe it's worthwhile pulling up his PRs. It's 30 and he's still got a few up, but here, let me just get that link. He's on Slack, but doesn't use Slack that much. I think because maybe his work doesn't use it. But yeah, he also did some of the InfraCost integrations as well. But those are some of his PRs that have already been merged. Cheers.
Nice. So yeah, Kent, if you're watching the recording, thanks. Thanks and welcome.
It did make me wonder if we need to, or we should look at other switching, having alternating meeting times just to have some TZ friendliness. We also have some folks in Eastern Europe that have been doing some contributions, and you know, just an idea right now. I think we would keep this and potentially just add one once a month in a different time zone, and just to make sure that we're being global and our community outreach and collaboration.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, your point about them not using Slack much, I'm wondering, I know it's been a while since we started prioritizing Slack over Gitter, and I don't know if, I mean, that seems like it's mostly been a good thing, but I don't know if we're losing some folks or if it's worth reviewing that.
I think it's mostly been time zone, and then just like he typically picks up messages I drop to him like in a few days. It's just, you know, I don't, and you don't actually technically, you need to use Slack as a client because we're mirrored into that index site, whose name I forget.
Linen, that was linen.dev.
Yeah, you can actually, Linen's full read write, so you can just log into Linen and directly chat from it as well.
Yeah, so something just to have in here, if folks are using Linen, or you don't even have to have an account, you can go to Linen. Do we? I'm wondering if we
log into Linen. I'm not sure exactly how it works. I know I've been able to chat from it. I don't know if we document Linen anywhere.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that and see if we need to put it in the community or the README somewhere, because it is. I've certainly used it for once messages age out of Slack. And we still need a permalink to them. It's pretty handy. Although this is showing April, so maybe. Oh, okay, you got something else.
What? I mean, that looks like the same one.
Yeah. All right. Well, then maybe we need to look at this.
Okay. Yeah. Slack might have disabled it or something. Who knows?
Yeah, but I've certainly got some good use out of that. Cool. Welcome, Michael. Okay, so talking about issues, talking about Linen. Any other issues or PRs that are worth the chat?
So I'm also not sure if Linen's prompt is like, you might want some form of payment. I'm not clear.
Yeah, brought that up and linked to it. Now I realize we need to review if it's still doing what we think it's doing. Okay. So big outstanding issue is the memory usage. We'll keep looking at that one. Okay, disconnected. Okay. Darren, policy packs. What's up there?
I was just curious if this is something that the community has thought about and considered of having some sort of crowdsource or open source contribution model for different kind of policies. Into it, we have lots and lots of AWS policies. Would love to contribute, and at the same time, as we venture into GCP, we would hate to have to write everything from scratch. And then also as we venture into Kubernetes too for policy there, would love to have some sort of crowdsourcing work in place rather than do everything from scratch.
I was just talking to another organization that is actually in the process of open sourcing their policies, and I was trying to figure out what the right. So, like, would like a separate repo for each provider type of thing? Does that make sense? Okay,
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
okay. I'm good for that. We can just, I guess, create the repos inside Cloud Custodian org, GitHub org. Does that sound reasonable? We'll just create, like, I don't know what to call them. Naming's always hard, but any suggestions are welcome. Maybe we start a GitHub issue in the existing repo, just to, as a proposal, just to sort of kick off the process, and we can do discussion there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. And also puts me in mind, like, having a well-tested set of things that we can collaborate on sounds good.
Yeah, and I think it will help a lot of new people coming to who just want to see examples of policies. I think a lot of the question that people ran into is, how do I do things? Having documentation is good, but having some more thorough set of example or good to go policy, I think that will help people a lot.
Yeah, I think the question always gets when you get to remediation. That's where things get more specific on stuff, and like what's your, and so those, like, that's where I think remediation is probably still, we'll just want to improve the docs, but at least getting started on detection would be a good start.
I remember, I know we've got, so I know there are some open repos out there with kind of a, it's a mishmash of policies that folks have contributed between blog posts and other repos. And I know I've done some work with scraping docstring like policies out of our docs and setting those, but that seems like that's not quite sufficient either. This would be, I'm guessing it's an entirely separate effort, huh? Or maybe we can use some of that stuff, I don't know. But this would be provider-specific repos all under the custodian org is the idea?
Yeah, like I figured let's start jump-starting this stuff, especially like looking at, like, even on the shift left side, like there's just so many tools out there that have, like, I think policies are, there's at least, CIS benchmarks or something like that. They're like, this stuff is going to be becoming commoditized, and I think it's also helpful to getting people started. I mean, I think it's an open question on to what degree it's like supported versus like, standard open source, use at your own risk type of thing. But yeah, I think it sounds good to sort of help grow the community.
So yeah, I can go ahead and create an issue for us to get started. Thank you.
All right, other topics. Doesn't even have to be issue or PR related at this point, I think, unless we've got specific PRs to dig in and group review. If no one's got anything, we'll give a few seconds for people to chew on it. And then if we're done, we'll just wrap here and we can always sync up on Slack. All right, going once, twice. I think we're done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Folks new and old. Thanks for
Everyone.
getting together. See you next time.
Thank you.